Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1474. The topic is training, and the title is Mixing Strength, Muscle Growth, and Fat Loss. So I wanted to cover just today like a quick little template or kind of format that you can use if you're creating training programs or just workouts for yourself or for clients, and how you would kind of accomplish all three of those goals in a single workout: strength, muscle growth, and fat loss. We've talked about it here and there, but I figured it was time for like an updated, kind of more succinct version of this. So when you are wanting to mix these goals, nutrition has to be appropriate and supporting of these goals. So in order to get strength, you can get stronger without a caloric surplus. There's three main ways you can look at getting stronger. One is technique improvement, and that can you can improve your technique whether you're in a calorie deficit or calorie surplus. So that's, you can definitely display your strength better. That's what technique really does, is it just allows you to better display the strength you have. So sometimes people will feel they're getting stronger, but actually they just got technically better at the exercise or the lift, and therefore they can better display the strength they actually have. The other way to get stronger is actually just physical strength, like physically get stronger. Make better nerve connections to the muscles, maybe grow the muscles, all that kind of odds and ends. And then the third one is mental. You just basically get out of your own head. You get out of your own way. You feel more confident in the lift. You don't question yourself as much. So there's mental effects to strength. If we look at those three ways, technique, physical, and mental, you can make technique and mental improvements regardless of the nutrition. Physical, you do need to have proper nutrition in place. You have to have proper calories and proper protein, as well as sleep and recovery and stress reduction and other things. But proper calories and protein in order to be able to make the new nerve connections, to increase muscle tissue in the areas that you need it in order to be stronger. So there's a lot of small supporting muscles around the big ones, around the joints and stuff, that need to be grown and strengthened. So strength does need nutritional support. It doesn't seem as obvious as, say, muscle growth. You do have to have caloric surplus in your recovery times, as well as muscle available protein to build the muscle. And then fat loss is making sure that you don't have excess calories beyond what your physiological needs are at different times of the day. So there is intricacy to it, but it actually is relatively simple. It's simple in concept. It's not necessarily simple to, act out in your life, but it's simple in concept. If you listen to podcast 1232, it's a nutrition podcast titled Start Here, and it literally tells you the steps that you can take in order to set this up for yourself. But you want to use calories. That's the first thing to be tracking and being mindful of. And you're going to want to do caloric cycling. That's just a fancy way of saying, I'm going to eat more on days I move more. I'm going to eat less on days I move less. But you're also going to do a mini form of caloric cycling where we eat more going into a workout, but we eat less away from workouts. So not in just a 24-hour comparison, but micro comparisons throughout the day. Is when you're away from your workout, you want to eat low, like maybe maintenance level, slightly in a small deficit. But when you get into your workouts, like the meal before the workout and then intra-workout, you want to be in a caloric surplus. You want to be able to fuel that energy that you need for a great workout to maximize the change stimulus that the workout is going to create. So you have to do caloric cycling day by day, but you also have to do caloric cycling throughout the day, which could be considered distribution. That's a term that we've used, where I've talked before about one of the basic ways I have people distribute their calories and protein is what we call thirds. If you break your day into three sections, say the first 5 to 6 hours of being awake, the second 5 to 6 hours of being awake, and the third 5 to 6 hours of being awake. So if you break your day into those sections, you want to make sure that each third of the day has an equal amount of carbs and protein. Calories and protein. You want to make sure your calories and protein are coming evenly throughout the day. Once you get used to that, there's then the next step, which would be is that you want to emphasize the 5 to 6 hour block that your workout is contained in. You want to eat more during that block. In that block, you do want to be in a caloric surplus. And that's going to actually help fuel the workout. And then what we do with that, the benefit of that is it does have that distribution of calories to best match your energy levels. And you're basically giving your body exactly what it needs, but slowly picking off some body fat along the way. But because you are supporting the body and giving it almost what it needs all the time, it doesn't have a desire to replenish body fat because it doesn't feel it's super necessary. Like, let's say, for example, you have 10,000 calories of body fat. I'm just making up numbers. You have 10,000 calories of body fat, and your body keeps that just in case you just don't eat for a whole day, because it can't predict what you're doing. Sometimes you have breakfast, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have a big lunch, sometimes you skip lunch. Sometimes you don't eat anything all day and you eat everything at night. So you're really sporadic in your eating, so the body's like, oh man, I need to protect myself. I need to have more energy and reserves for protection. Well, the less sporadic you are, the more consistent you are, the less the body feels like that excess is necessary. So it'll let you strip it down to 8,000, then 6,000, then 4,000, then 2,000. And then maybe around 2,000, it says, hey, you're really consistent. I don't see myself needing more than the 2,000 calorie protection. So all of a sudden now you only have a body fat level related to 2,000 calories, not 10,000 calories in reserve. So that's why it's so important to be consistent with your calories, but also distribute them to match your activity needs, because you're trying to create an environment in which the body does not feel that stored body fat as protection for organs is necessary. Okay. Now, protein, you want to make sure that's on point. And again, that's explained in podcast 1232. And then through all this, you just want to be consistent. You know, how consistent do you need to be? Do you need to be perfect? No. But 10 out of 12 days, 10 to 12 out of 14 days. So out of every 2 weeks, if you're looking at, okay, I'm getting this right 5 to 6 days a week. So 5 to 6 days a week, I have my calories on point, my protein on point, my distribution on point. If you're doing that, you're going to get the benefits of increased strength, muscle growth, and fat loss. But if you're not hitting those numbers, like you might have calculated them and figured it out what it should be, but you actually have to pay attention whether you're doing it. So you have to track it and see, okay, am I consistent at least 10 out of 14 days? But I would definitely aim more towards 12 out of 14 if you can. Okay? So that's the nutritional part of it. And that absolutely does need to be in place if you want to have all three of these goals accomplished through your training: is strength, muscle growth, and fat loss. If you don't have your nutrition on point, but you're brand new to training the way that I'm about to explain, you'll get an initial change in all of these areas. What's mostly going to happen is, especially if you're fired up in your training, you're probably eating cleaner than you were before. So you're going to get technique improvement in your strength lifts. So your numbers on the weights that you can use will go up. You'll get some fat loss because you're probably super awesome about your nutrition and you're under eating compared to what you were before. And that might help you see more muscles, which is going to make it look like it's muscle growth. So if you are under eating, you'll get an initial change by getting technique improvements in strength, not physical improvements, just technique improvements. And you'll get some fat loss and you'll see some muscles, but that doesn't mean they're growing. It just means you have less fat and less water retention on them. So if you don't pay attention to the food, you might get an initial response from this, but then it's going to plateau and you're not going to see much, and you're going to think it's not working anymore. No, the nutrition has to be on point for all of it to work. Okay? So, training-wise, the first thing you want to do when you're creating a workout is to start with a proper warm-up. Now, sometimes people think warm-ups are a waste of time, only if you do them incorrectly and are doing them for too long. So we have a podcast 1112. So 1112, it's a training podcast titled The Best Warm-Up Routine. If you want to find our old podcast, you can just go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have a podcast player there, as well as instructions on how to find older podcasts. So you want to start with a good warm-up routine that addresses shoulders, so shoulder mobility, shoulder health, core strength, and hip mobility. And in that podcast, 1112, we explain how to do all that. All of that can take less than 10 minutes. It's relatively quick. These are areas that absolutely impact everything you do in the gym. If you have poor upper body posture, poor core strength, poor hip mobility and posture in your hips, everything else goes to crap. And you're going to get a lot of joint annoyance. You're not going to feel very strong. Everything's going to feel just kind of awkward and weird. So it's really, really, really important to take care of your shoulders, core, and your hips as your warm-up. And again, it can be 10 minutes or less. Then you go to a strength movement. And I'll explain more of this a little bit, and I'll give you a sample exercise here in a second. But you would go to your heaviest movement of the day. And often with the heaviest movement of the day, I pair something small with it. And it can be, maybe something like for mobility, just a little mobility drill that you're adding. Like, for example, with squats, you can add like calf stretches, and that just sometimes helps you get deeper in your squat because a lot of people are limited by ankle mobility. You would just do something that helps keep you active during your rest periods, because big strength lifts, you want to take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8 minutes, depending on how strong you are, between the sets. But you don't want to sit around and do nothing. You definitely don't want to get on your phone and get lost in social media. So stay active, do something small. And then we go into a circuit of muscle stress work, which is kind of like pump-based work. And you're going to push the pace of that. And I'm going to give you an example workout here in a second. But you would go into a circuit of muscle-based exercises. And what that means is you're not doing, just body weight cardio things. You actually have some weights in your hand. You're beating up the muscles. You get a big pump in the muscles. But you also want to push the pace so you're a little bit out of breath. You want the muscle burn to be the limiter of what you're doing, but you want to be out of breath also a little bit while you're doing it. And then at the very end, you can add some type of muscle cardio type finisher. Now, we have podcast number 30. So way back when, podcast number 30 is a training podcast titled Muscle Cardio, How to Lose Fat Without Losing Muscle. Again, you can go to our website to find older podcasts. But that podcast explains what muscle cardio is. Essentially, you're doing a little bit of a different emphasis than what I just explained. Was when we talked about that circuit of muscle stress where you're going for a pump and you want the muscles to be the limiters, not the aerobic capacity. Well, what you do with muscle cardio is you flip that a little bit. You use weights to get yourself out of breath. It's not necessarily that the weights are the problem, it's just that you can't freaking breathe anymore. But when you use weights to do your cardio, it promotes that you hold on to muscle tissue. And if you do it with certain exercises, you can actually still build muscle tissue in very weak areas around joints. So it actually helps with mobility, injury prevention, and a lot of other benefits as well. So this is kind of the routine, the structure that you should follow. You can use this routine for a 30-minute workout, 45-minute workout, 60-minute workout. So I've trained people through this routine a bajillion times, and have helped trainers and training directors put together programs based around this type of routine. So it's a warm-up that focuses on shoulder, core, and hips under 10 minutes. Then you go to a strength movement that you pair with something small. So maybe you have somebody that really wants to work on glute development, so you do a bunch of glute bridges in between your strength movement. So you just make it individual. Maybe you have a guy that wants to have big arms. You have him do some bicep curls in between the big movement. So whatever it is for yourself or for that client, that's what you would pair with that. And that can take roughly about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how long you want it to take. Then you go to that muscle kind of pump stress circuit, and then if you have the time at the end, you add some type of muscle cardio finisher. So an example workout is if we're looking at a full body workout, but you want it to be a lower body emphasis with squats. If you start with a circuit, there's and you can kind of YouTube search all the names of the exercises I'm about to give, or just shoot me an email, and I'll send you this workout written up if you want, with actually YouTube links for tutorials for the exercises. But an example workout would be is you start with floor YTWs. If you don't know what a YTW is, it's a really good movement. It's very challenging, actually. It's a really good movement for thoracic, which is kind of your shoulder blades and upper back area, thoracic mobility and health and strength. So it really helps with posture, and it helps with healthy shoulders. So that's a really good one, floor YTWs. Then you go into an activated plank with posterior pelvic tilt. And this is really cool for kind of opening up your hip flexors, getting the glutes and your abs involved in a plank rather than your lower back taking the beating of it. So an activated plank with posterior pelvic tilt. and then you go into a running pigeon pose. If you don't know what a running pigeon pose is, it's actually a really cool exercise. It helps open up the inside muscles of your glutes, the external rotators, make sure that they're open for good range of motion. And it also works on whole hip mobility, the hip muscles within the hip socket, and opening them up and kind of opening up your range of motion. So then if you went into squats, you would feel super good because you have the floor YTWs help improve your upper back positioning for the bar on your back. The activated plank with posterior pelvic tilt helps activate your core stabilization and tightness that you'll need in the squat. And then the running pigeon pose helps loosen the glutes, loosen your hamstrings and adductors, as well as increase free range of motion through the hip socket. So all of those three, not only are they helping you have healthy shoulders, core, and hips, they're helping you specific to a squat. Now with the squat, we might do 3 sets of 2 reps with 2 RIR. What RIR means is reps in reserve. And all that really means, what we're saying here is, I want you to do 3 sets of 2 reps where you're going to do a weight that you could probably do for 4 reps if you really push yourself. So 2 RIR means you're going to do 3 sets of 2 reps with 2 reps in reserve, meaning you really could do 2 more if you wanted to. So that would be a weight of around a 4 rep max. So you're going to do 3 sets of 2 reps. That's heavy. So it does cause good, productive connective tissue and muscle stress, but it also helps you work on your technique without getting into bad positions because you're pushing too close to failure. So 3 sets of 2 reps with 2 reps in reserve. So basically 3 sets of 2 reps with a 4 rep max. That's going to help you get a ton of technique improvement. That's that strength component. It does get you some physical stress and damage because of the heaviness of the weight. So that's building that physical component. And then it's getting you under really heavy weights. 4 rep max, pretty heavy weight. So that's going to help you get more comfortable under heavy weights. So that's the mental component. After your 3 sets of 2 reps at the 4 rep max, you're then just going to take 1 set of that to as many reps as you can. Maybe you only get 3 because you're fatigued. Maybe you bust out a 4th and surprise yourself. Maybe even you get a 5th because your technique is actually a little bit cleaner and you've gotten to work on it. So you do 3 sets of 2 reps with 2 reps in reserve. So 3 sets of 2 reps with a 4 rep max. And then you do 1 set just all out good form failure. And then with that, like I said, you can kind of, in between the rest periods of the squats, you can do calf stretches, which helps improve squat depth for a lot of people. You can do reverse crunches. I actually really like doing this. It alleviates lower back pump, and it helps activate and strengthen your core. And I like it because it helps pull in your abdominal wall. So I'm 285 pounds, and I don't want my belly to stick out further than my chest does. So I do a lot of reverse crunches and a lot of dead bugs and vacuums that helps really keep my core in check. So that way, when you look at me from the side, my chest sticks out further than my belly does. So 285, I actually have like you can see the outlines of my abs. So it's not that I have fat, it's just as you get bigger and you lift heavier things, your abdominal wall can be distended due to thickness of the tissue. So I have done powerlifting and deadlifted 700 pounds, so my ab wall has gotten thick over the years, and I'm actually working now to kind of pull that back in. I want to just kind of keep it in check and have a little bit more of an aesthetic look. So I do a lot of reverse crunches, vacuums, dead bugs, things like that in between my big lifts. Or you can even do bodyweight walking lunges. That's a great way to just help add extra cardio. If you want more of a cardio focus in the workout, it feels like it's too slow to do heavy squats, do a bunch of walking lunges in between them. It certainly won't be too slow now. And then that also helps balance out muscular development throughout the lower body, the hips, the knees, the ankles. So if you have, stiffness or weakness with bodyweight movements, it's good to kind of throw those in because it helps to challenge those muscles to stabilize the joints. So that's what you would do in kind of the middle part of the workout there. And then you go to a circuit, and we'll have an example of doing dumbbell hang hold alternating reverse lunges. I'll give you a second for that to sink in. So you're going to hold dumbbells at your sides, and then you're just going to do alternating reverse lunges. And you might do, say, 8 to 16 steps, somewhere in there. So that's 4 to 8 reps per leg, which is a pretty heavy weight for alternating reverse lunges, but this is really good for tissue damage to help build and shape the tissues of the lower body. I like alternating reverse lunges because they have a really good blend between quads, hamstrings, glutes, unilateral, so that way you can balance your sides, and then it helps build strength and balance in the ankle, knee, and hip on both sides. So it's really good exercise, very complex. Then maybe after a set of that, you go right into dumbbell push-ups, where you have your hands on the dumbbells you just used and you do push-ups. What's nice is you can get a really deep stretch at the bottom of the push-up to help open up and pull open any tightnesses you have in your chest, and it helps just get an extra degree of stress in the chest fibers due to that extra stretch. So it's a good way, like we said, if this was a full body workout but you want it mostly lower body emphasis, this is where you start to build that upper body component into the workout. You want to do roughly 10 to 40 seconds of push-ups. If you can do your body weight for more than 40 seconds, put your feet on something, make it a little bit harder by maybe putting bands under your hands, and then you have to push up into the band, or you can change your pace. So try to do a 3-second eccentric, 3-second concentric, so 6 seconds per rep, and that can kind of wear you out as well. That way it limits any momentum and makes it a lot harder. Then you have a choice. If you want to kind of be able to be done with the workout, you can just do dumbbell thrusters. So after the lunges, then the push-ups, then you stand up, you clean the dumbbells up to your shoulders, and then you do thrusters with the dumbbells, which is like a squat into an overhead press. Your legs will already be worn out, your arms will already be worn out, so it's a great way to just crush your lungs and burn all those muscles up, and that gets a lot of caloric use, that gets a lot of cardiovascular development, a lot of muscular endurance development, and you would do that for, say, 8 to 12 reps, maybe even 10 to 14, somewhere in there. If you want a little bit of a slower pace, you want to focus more on muscle growth, instead of thrusters, maybe you can do dumbbell RDLs. So you do the dumbbell hang hold, alternating reverse lunges, into the push-ups, then you stand up and you do dumbbell RDLs. That's a little bit of a slower pace. So it kind of depends, do you want to push more towards the strength and muscle development part, or do you want to push more towards the fat loss part? So what's great about that structure is you have a warm-up that you know is going to address core, shoulders, and hips. You have a strength movement paired with something that's an assistance type thing or something that's related but low level intensity. Then you finish with a circuit that targets whatever muscles you want for that day. And then you're done. It's a really clean structure. Very clean, very simple, very easy to execute, but it has a lot of variety within it. So that way you can make up a bunch of workouts, endless workouts for yourself. Or if you're a trainer, you can use this structure for all of your clients, but make small modifications to make sure the workouts are still personalized to their needs. So it's really cool. Just a really clean structure. I think it works great. I've used it for 20 years, so it works really well. But I thought it would be fun to share. If you want more free workouts, check out our website. We have a free kind of programming page now that I'll be slowly adding more and more examples to, so you can see how I train different clients with different goals. And then we'll also be selling workout templates. I'm going to start creating templates like what I'm explaining in today's podcast that will show categorically what exercises you should pick with a couple months worth of examples. And then we're also going to have educational support to back that up. So this is really going to be something I want to focus on, to where I teach people how to train themselves. And I think that's super duper fun. I think a lot of people don't do that. A lot of places you can go buy a program, but nobody teaches you why that program's any good or how that program could be best for you. So I figured I'd take that approach. So I really appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. I appreciate all the support and the growth that the business has been able to have. So I want to be able to give back more by focusing more and more on education. So go check out our website. We're updating it. I'm going to try to update it every single week with new stuff. It's www.brutalirongym.com. Okay, well, thank you for listening. I hope that the podcast has been helpful in your life. If you do like our podcast, please share it. The more people we share it with, the more people it can help, the more people we just help live healthier and happier lives. You share it on social media. That's the best way. You can also just share it in a conversation. I just appreciate if you do, and hopefully they'll appreciate it because it'll help them. Thank you to the people who financially support the podcast with donations. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every day, and I want to keep it for free. So I appreciate the donations to help cover some of that cost. If you want to donate, you can do so at our website, www.brutalirongym.com. Also, if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.